Hey everybody, welcome to week 2. So this week we're going to be focusing on exploring how security groups monitor daily events in the network, determine countermeasures that are taken to combat cyber attacks, and identify how tactical intelligence coordination is conducted. Um, so if we look at what we've got going on today or this week, if we look at our reading, you'll notice that you have one PDF file that you've got to look at. It's called our MITRE's 10 Strategies for Cyber Ops Center, or 10 Strategies of World-Class Cyber Ops Security Operations Center. Uh, if you click on the link, it'll take you into the PDF. Um, this is a really lengthy document, and I don't expect you to read all 346 pages of this, but I want you to skim through the 10 strategies of the World Class Security Operations Center and get the important information out of it. So, who is MITRE? Let's start there. MITRE is a huge not-for-profit organization that works in public interest across federal, state, and local governments, as well as industry and academia. They work in areas as varied as artificial intelligence, intuitive data science, quantum information sciences, health informatics, space security, policy and economic expertise, trustworthy autonomy, cyber threat sharing, and cyber resilience. They keep the CVE database, the Common Vulnerability and Exploitation Database. They are very heavy into cyber resilience and cyber warfare. They have done a lot of work with the three-letter name groups from the government: CIA, NSA, FBI, all of those little three-letter groups. Uh, but they also do a lot for others, and including business and academia. So they put out this document that is talking about um, the. Let me put the document up here. So they put out this document that is talking about what they think are the top 10 strategies of a world-class cybersecurity operations center. And we talk about cybersecurity operations center, or we just call it a SOC, a security operations center. And like I say, it's 346 pages long. It's massive, um, but they've got really interesting strategies here, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on these. I'm going to kind of go through them right now for you. So when we look at these, let's look at strategy one. MITRE is saying to consolidate the computer network defense. Well, that's what CND stands for. When you see it in the document, computer network defense, we should consolidate it under one organization. So what does that mean? So there are normally different groups that are tasked with cyber defense and detection. MITRE is offering that putting the groups such as real-time monitoring, cyber news collection, analysis, incident response, forensic analysis, and so forth under one management structure, security would be tightened, and as there's more discussion within the group rather than being siloed. You're going to find in businesses that security operations centers are managed differently across the board, and some feature the siloing of the groups, some feature flattened out. It all depends on the business and what they're trying to get out of it. So strategy one is saying maybe we should look at consolidating everything and flattening it out. So let's go on to number two: achieve balance between size. So there are competing needs for our organizations. We need to have cohesive team of computer network defense, or CND, professionals, but there must be access to the assets being monitored, be it physical or virtual. And we have budgetary and authority limits inherent in the business. So they're sometimes competing. Well, not sometimes, they're always competing priorities. MITRE, in their strategy, is looking to find a workable balance between these competing issues. And what do we mean by competing issues? Having the right access to the assets being monitored, be it physical or virtual, excuse me, do they have to be, do the analysts have to be on site? Can they be remote? Um, can What kind of access are we going to allow them? And this will kind of get into strategy 3 here in a second. But we also need to look at the budgetary portion of it. We can be so secure that um, and spend so much money that we could secure ourselves out of business. And so we've got to walk that fine line. And I talked about that last week, I believe, a little bit. So then we're going to go to strategy 3, and this one kind of gets a little controversial. Give the SOC the authority to do its job. Uh, so what MITRE is saying is that Security Operations Center needs to have the authority and access to the systems that may be under attack. Now it's controversial because system administrators don't like giving up access to the authority to anyone outside their group. They don't trust anybody, just like the SOC people don't trust any of the system administrators. By giving the SOC this access, they potentially lose control of the system. It's a fine line that needs to be walked, and this one really falls back to management on how they're going to be doing this. Do you give the SOC access to be able to turn off the spigot, if there's a breach? Um, so there's a I've seen it go multiple ways in companies, where they've given them some access, where they've given them no access, and so on. So that's a company by company type of decision. Strategy 4, do a few things well. So I found this one, how do you select which tasks the SOC should do and do it well? Back here in Minnesota, back in the day, and this will age me for a while, but there was a commercial for a bankruptcy lawyer Jack Prescott, that was his name, Jack Prescott. His whole tagline was, "This is all I do, and I do it well." He is a bankruptcy attorney, and so he filed thousands of bankruptcies and stuff, and that's all he did, and he did it well. Is that how our SOC should be configured? They do one or two or three things and they do it really, really well. Or do we broaden their horizons or broaden out their scope, and maybe not make them, very proficient, or not proficient, but maybe make it so they're not as directed in some areas as they are in others. But where do we draw the line on what SOC should handle and what should be done by other groups? That's going to be a key question in there. Strategy 5, I found this one kind of interesting. This one can be tough to manage too. Look at your staff for quality rather than quantity. You can have a lot of analysts on your team, but if only a handful of them really understand the security environment, you're wasting time and money. My company does RIFs every now and again, reduction in force, where they'll basically lop off the bottom few percent of people who aren't being productive. And does it hurt? Yeah, it does, because you're losing an individual. But in the long run, is it better for the organization? And most of the time it is. You're getting rid of the dead wood and focusing on the right people. So that leads us right into 6, which is maximizing the value of the technology purchase. This one, well, let me go back to 5. One other thing I forgot to mention in there. Getting quality candidates when we're hiring positions in our current environment is not easy. I've got an open requisition for a security analyst level 2. We have 4 levels, level 1 through level 4. So I'm looking for a level 2. And, it's the old catch-22. I want to hire somebody who has experience. Well, if you don't hire me, how can I get experience? And so that gets to be kind of tough. And I even told my recruiter that is out looking to fill my position, that I would be willing to look at somebody with less experience, but if they had some of the knowledge that I'm looking for, I'd like to see that. Now, the drawback to that is my company deals with the federal government and is under federal contracting rules. And so, what is said in our position descriptions um, are taken as gold. So, I've got a 4 year minimum of 4 years of experience requirement in my position description. I can't hire somebody with 2.5 years of experience. If I get audited by the government, they're going to ding us for it. So that gets to be really tough. And right now, in the security world, we're basically poaching from each other. Who can I grab from some other company? It's not. It's a constant battle. So we go on to strategy 6, which is talking about the maximizing the value of technology purchases. Uh, there's nothing more dangerous than an executive with a security magazine in their hand, because they're going to look at it and say, oh, this product, we need to bring that in because this is going to do this for us. Well, that's not always the case. Um, we've got to make sure that the systems we utilize are proper for our business. My company spends $3 to $5 million a year on security products and services alone. That handles vulnerability scanning. It handles penetration testing by third parties. It handles what we call SAST, which is software automated security testing. We have what we call DAST, which is dynamic um, automatic security testing. Those are testing third-party utilities. It's also testing our code that we write to make sure that it doesn't have any security issues to it. Um, we have monitoring software that we utilize. We have all sorts of stuff. 3 to 5 million a year on that. We continually validate that we're getting the value for what we're spending. I mean, that you need to do that. And there have been many times where we haven't renewed a contract or we've changed vendors because they weren't living up to what we were expecting. Or in one case, the vendor decided to raise their rates by approximately 200% year over year. And we said, sorry, see ya. It's a constant battle again, just like it is with hiring quality individuals. So strategy 7, exercising discrimination in the data that you gather. Uh, it's a major issue in our organizations. When you have a large organization, chances are you're going to have a huge footprint for network and on-network devices, servers, storage, IoT devices, Internet of Things devices, cameras, printers, yada, yada, yada. You're going to have a huge the inventory of your products are going to be big that are going to be hanging off your network. So, for example, in my company, I've got 23,000, give or take, Windows and Linux servers on-prem and up in the cloud, and in various co-locations, colos. So we got about 23,000, 25,000 servers, plus all the network gear, plus all of our IoT devices and so on. All total, we've got about 40,000 devices that hang off of our network. And that's important for us because we that everything logs something. You can pull a log from every one of those devices, but you've got to decide which ones do you really need to pull logging from, and are you going to monitor that logging. Um, that can be a big thing, a really big thing, because it comes down to how much storage do you have, how much bandwidth do you have internally to be able to transfer these log files to your central logging facility, and then what kind of software, what kind of pieces can you put in there to automate um, to automate the ability to um, review these logs and look for specific security incidents. Um, it's it's you got to take into consideration so many things when you start to log security data, and it's a huge thing. My company just went through this. It was a huge project, and it costs a lot of money on a yearly basis to gather this data and to retain it for however long our retention period is, and run it through automated testing protocols to see if we've got any problems. So let's look at 8, protect the SOC mission. This is a complex issue again. We want the SOC to be insulated from the rest of the business, but yet they have to be able to interact with the business. So I liken this to the surveillance department in a casino. If you've ever seen casinos and you go into a casino and you look up and there are cameras, we call them the eye in the sky, and they are monitoring everything that goes on in that casino. I worked for a casino here in the state for a few years in their IT department, and I had to work with surveillance because of one of the products that I managed interacted with what surveillance was doing. They kept to themselves. They don't socialize with anybody else other than surveillance folks. They're kept anonymous, basically. You don't know who they are, because nothing's written on their badges, and you don't know who they are or whatever. Their job was to watch everything and everyone in the casino. That means all of the patrons and all of the employees. So it's kind of interesting when you think about a casino, and if you're down in the table games playing blackjack, for example, you have what's called a pit boss. And the pit boss is the person who is watching all of their table games. They may have 4 or 5 games in their pit that they're managing, and they watch the dealers. So the dealers are supposed to be watching the players to make sure that the players aren't cheating. The pit bosses are watching the dealers to make sure the dealers aren't cheating, and they're also watching the players. And then you've also got the floor personnel, and they're the ones, well, the floor personnel are actually watching the dealers, and then the pit boss is watching the floor personnel. So you've got 2 layers of management down there. And then above all of that, you've got the eye in the sky sitting up there, and they are watching everything, making sure everything is working correctly and stuff. That's the way we want our SOC to be. The SOC has to monitor everybody internally for attacks and externally for attacks. And that gets to be a really big thing. We want to make sure that our SOC team has the ability to remain above everything. And there's also a lot of trust that's put on our SOC team because they have a lot of ability to monitor things that most people wouldn't. So it's strategy 8, it's kind of a big one. Strategy 9, being a sophisticated consumer and product or producer of cyber threat intelligence. Well, you wouldn't think of a company having to put together cyber intelligence, but this strategy takes us into the world of APT, or advanced persistent threats, which are basically zero-day vulnerabilities, things that come out immediately and are exploited in the wild immediately. And there have been a number of them. The WannaCry ransomware vulnerability that was running out a couple of years ago infected many businesses and hospitals and government entities and so on, and locked them out of their data until they paid up. And in cases, we can't wait for patches or detection methods to help us. We got to be proactive about these things. And being proactive is tough. So that means we've got to be watching the news groups on the dark web, seeing what the hackers are talking about, keeping up with discussions from other security experts. We got to watch the news. What's going on? With the stuff going on in Ukraine and Russia right now, there are many more attacks going on worldwide than what is normal. We got to find every little tidbit of information possible to detect the presence of a new attack method. So when I said back in session 1 that we're playing a game of chess and we hope for a stalemate, this is one of those methods that can help us get there, get to that stalemate. We can look and see if we can find that intelligence, and we have to share that intelligence with others in our team and in our industry to make sure that they're protected as well. And finally, we come to strategy 10, which is stop, think, respond calmly. Probably the toughest one of all. Keeping calm. Stop, think, respond. and do it in a rational and calm manner. Being able to keep yourself under control during an incident is an absolute necessity. Hysteria is just going to make it worse. And making sure the team stays focused and is utilizing all the information available to solve the problem is the job of the SOC leadership. So if you're the leader of the SOC, you're the one that's got to maintain calm, make sure that you're giving clear direction, make sure that you are um, following procedures that you've laid out ahead of time, hopefully, and making sure that you're keeping everybody appraised of what's going on. Planning and practice need to be a part of your operation. That's the biggest thing, especially when it comes to cyber defense. When an incident happens, you want to be able to react immediately. It's kind of like muscle, what they call muscle memory. You know, when you need to be able to do something and you don't even think about it, you just do it. That's what needs to be done when you're dealing with incident response and breaches. Um, it's a fine line again to walk, but you got to make sure everybody stays calm. So that's the 10 strategies. Be interesting to see what you think about them. The discussion boards you're going to be doing are going to be talking about those a little bit. And so let's take a look at that. I get to the right screen. There we go. So let's look at your discussion boards that are due this week. So again, you're going to be choosing one of these three. What are some of the Security Operations Center's capabilities? And name at least 4 and then describe the capability. Number 2, when creating the SOC, you want to achieve a balance between size and agility. How does an organization go about doing that? That'll be an interesting answer if some of you guys take that one up. And number 3, how does the SOC become a sophisticated consumer and producer of cyber threat intelligence? That's at number 9, if I remember correctly. And that's huge. How do you become somebody who knows what's going on in the cyber world? So I want you to answer one of those questions or those comments, and make sure you put them into the standard formats and stuff. You're going to reply to 2 cohort members, and you know, make sure you're done with your initial post by Thursday and your reply post by Sunday. And then the assignment that you've got to do this time around. You're going to do a little research regarding information on security operations centers. The document offered for this session is a good starting point. That's the MITRE document. In this paper, you'll describe the best-in-class security operations center. So what I want you to do is go out and see what you can find for what other companies are doing for security operations centers. Now, you're probably not going to find a ton of information because not everybody talks about it, but see what you can put together and see what's out there. And then make sure you cover these topics, introduce the readers to the content, how SOCs are constructed and organized, what are the responsibilities and capabilities, what are some of the software the SOC uses, what purpose does the software use. That's going to be an interesting one because there's all sorts of different pieces of software out there, from CMs to you know, things like our log aggregators and so on. How does the SOC support and contribute to incident response? That's a big one. What are some roles of technologists who work in the SOC? And offer conclusions summarizing it all and bringing it together. Minimum of 5 citations, 2 scholarly and 3 from other legitimate sources. If you can find 1 scholarly, I'm happy, okay? But make sure you come up with a few sources on this. All right, so that's your assignment that's due on Sunday. I think that's it. So if you have any questions or concerns or need any other information, I'm going to start grading your stuff now this week, and from that was due yesterday, and you should be seeing some comments on that stuff here pretty soon. So if you need anything, please let me know. Otherwise, have a wonderful week, and I hope You'll learn a lot about security operations centers. Talk to you next week.